I think there was a phenomenon, nonetheless, in the United States with Trump, let's say it like that, which has somehow considerably overturned things, removing certain certainties. Moreover, European Atlantists, even in Switzerland, we realize that these people are like orphans. They no longer know. They feel abandoned by the grandpa, by the patriarch. And it still somehow makes me think that there is a window of opportunity, as we say in Franglish, which could still open up and lead to something, well, after 3 years of war, something positive, as long as we consider peace and cessation of hostilities in Ukraine, sorry. There I'm going a bit too fast. As something positive.
So I completely agree with Georges. A real revolution took place in Washington on January 21st. Since 2022, the word peace was banned from American lips.
It's a bad word.
Contacts had been cut with Moscow. And then the revolution, it's first about talking peace. And then one of the first initiatives that the Trump administration took was to talk directly with the Russians. So that's a true revolution. And then, obviously, it left the Europeans, how to say that politely,
faced with their contradictions.
Their pants down. Is that what you meant to say?
Yes, I wanted to say that even a bit more bluntly. The Europeans are lost. Exactly. Now, where I am not sure the Trump administration anticipated correctly is that Putin has time. And Putin does not want a ceasefire at any cost. He is not at all cornered, while the others are cornered. However, Putin realizes that he has goodwill from Washington that he should not waste. So he has to learn to manage Trump in a way that doesn't alienate him to continue the process. That's probably why Moscow accepted already a kind of ceasefire, 2 partial ceasefires, one on strikes against electrical or energy installations, and then one in the Black Sea. Well, in my opinion, it's already to give Trump something to say, yes, yes, no, but look.
With conditions?
We are acting in good faith.
We are showing goodwill, but fundamentally, Putin has not given up on anything at all, not on regime change in Kyiv, nor on territorial claims, nor on disarmament of Ukraine. And then he even added an additional condition by saying if there are security guarantees, they will not be security guarantees offered by European troops. NATO or European, that remains to be seen, because there's still the Turkey-Switzerland option, which could be Switzerland will provide 200 soldiers according to our outgoing army chief, but why not? But why not? If it is within the framework of a ceasefire agreement or a peace agreement, I would have no problem with it. On the contrary, I would find that our army would be of use. So I don't find it completely stupid. But what I mean is that there is still a long way to go. And then now a requirement that wasn't really there earlier, rather, certainly not in 2022, when the negotiations for a first ceasefire were taking place in Istanbul. Now Putin is demanding new elections in Ukraine. Because, as he says, and he has some reasons to say it from the perspective of the Ukrainian constitution, Zelensky no longer has a mandate.
So what is truly the situation about that? Since some say that in the Ukrainian constitution, during a state of war or a particular state of tension in the country, it is not mandatory to hold elections.
As we know, when a state of emergency is declared, you can do whatever you want. It's a bit like in Switzerland during COVID.
But things are also evolving on that front. We hear that Zelensky might organize early elections. Well, not early, since he no longer has a mandate, but this summer still. So I think Trump really stirred things up, as you said, first, by stopping treating Putin as someone untouchable. So he is completely acceptable, and this also causes progress in Ukraine, things we didn't necessarily expect, and we'll see. But I really think anything is possible, because as Jean-Daniel, you point out, Putin hasn't conceded anything. Putin has time, Ukraine less so, And I think that Trump doesn't have time either, because Trump promised, not concerning Ukraine. He's not worried about Ukraine, but he's worried about his promises.
He was talking about 24 hours at the
Yes, the
beginning.
24 hours are already long past, but still, I think no one would blame him if he brought peace, the cessation of hostilities within 6 months. But I still believe that my deep conviction is that Trump is not a man of peace. We'll talk about the Middle East. We see enough of it to make one sick. More than enough in the Middle East. He is not a man of peace. Even if the Nobel Peace Prize, like Obama, would theoretically interest him, I think he is not on the path to being a peace president among American presidents.
Putin reminded that the United Nations had already experienced the introduction of external governance, for example, in East Timor in 1999, and in certain parts of the former Yugoslavia, in New Guinea. He suggested following a similar path in Ukraine. Do you think that's realistic, that it's a good idea?
I was very familiar with Timor-Leste because I was the ambassador of Switzerland and responsible for Timor. Indeed, I witnessed a massive operation. Well, there were more than 10,000 United Nations representatives who gave birth to a new state and who, at the beginning, indeed, they practically organized within the United Nations itself all the machinery of the state and then handed it over. So frankly, I think Putin's idea is politically, it's a failure. I mean, it's an idea like that.
But is it feasible?
Feasible, no. I don't see how the UN could be tasked in the current United Nations context. We speak very little of the UN right now, but I think Putin, it's a certain cleverness on his part to bring the UN back into play. But Putin is a formidable player. And I think it should be interpreted like that. I think that Putin himself does not believe that the United Nations will ever take control of Ukraine, at least initially, to organize a new state. What he wants is to get rid of Zelensky. That I think everyone has understood, as well as those around him. So I would say that all ideas are good in this context.
What will happen to Zelensky then in this context?
Oh, well, he'll go to one of his villas, I think, that he has in Florida or elsewhere. I think that there is no problem for him.
I lost a bet because I had bet at the beginning of 2024. In January of this year, he would be in exile in England. I was 6 months ahead, maybe.
Yes, and then finally, I bet too, and I lost. I thought he was going to be removed in Kyiv itself by the Ukrainian forces that supported him from the start, but who perhaps now see that he no longer serves their interests necessarily. I think if I were Zelensky, I would be worried indeed.
Technically, the United Nations is capable of organizing elections, obviously relying on the Ukrainian administration. And that's perhaps where I see a problem, is that for it to work, there needs to be an alignment, there needs to be approval, support of Ukrainians. So a majority of the Ukrainian population and Ukrainian institutions, because the UN cannot replace the existing Ukrainian administration. And that's where I see the problem. But now what is happening? Because it is quite possible if all of a sudden the Russians and the Americans pass a resolution in the Security Council under Chapter 7 by saying, here we mandate the Secretary General to organize elections in Ukraine. Will the French or the English veto it?
No, as in during the last resolution, they were strongly advised by the United States not to use their veto.
What resolution you say?
But it was about Ukraine. The terms, do you remember the exact terms? But we declare either a responsibility.
No, but it was a very short resolution. I think it was a paragraph that said, considering the immense human suffering and loss of life that have occurred in the conflict in Ukraine, the Security Council is committed to peace, roughly speaking, to a ceasefire.
And without mentioning who was responsible, without repeating the usual narrative, and the Europeans were completely opposed. They were against it, but they did not use their star. They abstained.
They abstained.
So but your idea is absolutely incredible. It's true. In the current context, we could not exclude it at all. Trump and Putin are going to talk again. I wanted to ask you the question, by the way. In this strategic vision and I find it fascinating, the maritime routes, etc. This friendship, in quotes, let's call it that, between Putin, it's still a relationship. I remember the conference during his first term, they're meeting in Helsinki, and when he came out of the meeting with Putin, there were only the translators, the interpreters, and who says, I understood everything. I now know that it was the FBI who did this, who did that. Putin explained it to me. Finally, it amazes me, so there is still a special bond between these two men. I do not know if it is a bromance, I do not know what it really is, but that plays a role. Because he did not say to himself, I have a strategic vision, I will try to separate Russia from China, I will set all this up. I think this friendship almost formed in mind. He wanted to reconnect with Putin, I think later, for Trump during his second term. It was very important, and then obviously afterward it creates a new synergy, a new dynamic. All this happened afterward, and it makes things much easier, the fact that the two men can talk to each other and that they do talk to each other.
Yes, well then, I don't know if it's friendship or if it's... no, it's certainly not friendship. It's more like a kind of alliance of circumstances. Maybe more than that still. I think that on a human level. In any case, what is certain is that there is a lot of respect. Trump respects strong people. I even tend to say strong men.
Even the leader of North Korea, let us remember, he met in Singapore during his first term.
So our records say Trump is somewhat a Russian agent for this. There's this whole theory, certainly somewhat conspiratorial as well, in this case on the other side, regarding his links with the KGB, etc. A fantasy.
Yeah, we'll never know. But honestly, I can't imagine Trump as an agent of the FSB or the KGB. It seems to me incredible.
In any case, there is no evidence to demonstrate
No,
it.
we also talked about films, videos that would exist, that were taken in hotel rooms in Moscow.
With everything we already know about Trump, what could still affect him? He broadcasts videos. I don't think that it would make the second one move, as Chirac used to say.